Hello, beautiful lights, and welcome to another episode of From a Medium's Perspective. Today, I thought it would be a great idea to talk about something clearing things up, or clear things, or shall we say, clear things. Today, we are going to be taking a look at things that are clear, things that are clair. We're taking a look at clairvoyance from a medium's perspective. After the first half of our show, I'm going to be sharing a tale of what you don't see from the other side, a tale from the other side about what you don't see and what that might mean. Then we'll be going into an exercise to develop your clairvoyance. Thank you again for joining us. You know, clairvoyance is a catch-all phrase. It's often used to refer to the collective of spiritual gifts that a medium possesses. Technically, clairvoyance means clear sight or clear seeing. It's differentiated from the other sentient gifts of clairaudience and clairsentience, etc., which I'll define in a minute. Clairvoyance or clear seeing is the ability to see anything that is not physically present, objects, animals, and people. This sight usually occurs in our mind's eye. There are some mediums that say that's their normal vision state, that they can see spirit all the time. Others have to train their perception and develop it through meditation or study with a more advanced medium in order to achieve it. Some clairvoyant mediums see spirit as if the spirit actually has a physical body. And I've had some occurrences of that. I think some of that has to do with the will of the spirit to present itself in connection with the medium, making that contact. But some people do have that nearly physical sight where it just looks like it's really, really, really there. Of course, it is really, really there, but only the medium can see it in that case. That would not be an example of physical mediumship where everyone can see the spirit. There are others that see the spirit kind of in a holographic form, sort of translucent, and others in their mind's eye. For me, the best way I describe that is to think about if you recall an event or a sight of something, a memory of something that's occurred for you, the place where those pictures occur in your mind, that's the same place that sometimes they can occur. You can see spirit there at that same locale. So if you can connect to your memories, you can probably connect to spirit too. For others, it's almost like a photograph in their mind, or maybe they might see a letter or something like that. Sometimes it looks like a movie in action. They might catch a little piece of something in action that seems significant to relay to their person that's sitting with them. For others, the image develops sort of piece by piece until it forms a full image, like the process of developing a picture with old school emulsion photography. If you've ever done that, you know, in the dark room with the red light, and you've looked into the bath and seen that clean sheet of paper begin to show an indication that there is something on it. And then as it develops, you see that the image is complete. And that's how it can be for many people, where your attention is drawn to a particular aspect and then another and another until a full image and personality has been formed. And what's interesting is once that image is formed in your mind, even if it comes piece to piece, it stays intact in your mind so that the next time you access it, you get sort of the full-on image of that. That could be because spirit is a little cautious about just jumping out of the woodwork and startling us sometimes, at least some of them are. It could be that that's just a gentle way to let us start observing, and that's the process of developing our gift, is by honing our focus and observing more and more the other side. Sometimes the image will precede a message. The reverse definitely can be true. An individual can hear or give a message and later be able to identify its source, but in spiritual mediumship, the best practice of message delivery is considered to be to first identify the source and then relay the message. But not everybody works that way. Sometimes they come in at the psychic end and start knowing and giving words, the message, and then being able to identify the spirit. So whichever way you jump in the pool, it's fine. We all come out wet. In evidentiary mediumship, that's the term evidence, like evidentiary, is giving the proof that you are indeed speaking to someone, that the person that you're reading for can identify or acknowledge through the descriptives that you give them that that is indeed someone that they know. But proofs are not always names. Our analytical brain would like to have name, address, and phone number, and that would just be really convenient for us mediums out here. But, words are the language of the physical world, and emotions are the language of the spirit world. And symbols kind of bridge the gap there. In reality, a deeper proof of someone's existence than their name would be their physical description, their mannerisms and gesticulations, patterns of speech, shared memories, evidence that shows that that medium is connected to that person, not just their name, because that could be picked up psychometrically off the paper. It could be picked up telepathically from you, but everything is connected. It's not one way over another. It's just my preference to let the person feel that that person is there and recognize them by some detailed description. For me, it can sometimes feel like a game of charades, and the spirit might act out what they're trying to convey. That happens a little less now that I've been practicing for a while professionally. But when someone's starting their mediumship, they might get a spirit, and the spirit's like pointing to their watch or tapping a button or something like that. My dad came through one person, a medium the other day that I was working with. He said that my dad was pointing to his eyebrows. Well, for me, for you, that might mean nothing. For me, that was dead on evidentiary mediumship because my dad was famous for his eyebrows. They were huge. They were just giant. The whole joke about Tammy Faye Baker and her big eyelashes. Well, my dad's students used to walk around campus and put their hands up over their eyebrows and say, "Hello, Dr. Locke." Anyway, so one of the highest compliments actually that I can receive as a medium is to have my client tell me that they feel as if they had a visit with the person that has passed and that they felt them present during the reading. Maybe they used the exact words or behaviors that they did while they were here. But if clairvoyance is clear seeing, what are the other abilities? You may know some of these, but I know when I was putting some study into this show and writing some things for it, I found some things that defined some of those gifts in a little bit more detail. Clairaudience is clear hearing. That's almost as familiar a word as clairvoyance to most people. It's usually defined as the ability to hear voices or thoughts of spirits. And some mediums hear that like they're listening to the person talking to them on the outside of their ears, and some as if the voices are a mental impress, sort of like if you were recalling a conversation in your mind, you could hear the other person's voice. So it's kind of like a verbal thought, like the words remembered from a conversation. That's clairaudience. Clairsentience is clear sensing. It is the ability to have an impression of what spirit wants to communicate or feel the message and interpret the emotional language through the sensations that are instilled by that spirit. It's sort of a form of wordless mind-to-mind communication, a full understanding of the story and message that's being given by a particular spirit. That's when I feel like an interpreter. And that's clairsentience, clear sensing. It's about the message. Now, there's a clairsentience, on the other hand, which is clear feeling, and that's opposed to clear sensing, which is clairsentience. The only difference in the spelling is there's an extra N in there. So clairsentience is clear feeling, and that's when the medium feels the same physical problem or conditions of passing that the spirit had before death or something that was significant to them during their life. So clairsentience is a feeling of the physical proofs of spirit, clairsentience is a sensing of the mental messages of a spirit. So clairsentience, clear feeling. The first time that happened to me, to the extreme, I was doing a reading and I got an incredibly sharp pain in the side of my head near my temple, and I thought, oh my God, I'm going to have a stroke. And then the pain expanded down my neck and into my chest, and I was having trouble concentrating on what I was giving for my client. And it just intensified so much. I thought, well, I guess if I'm going to die, at least it's while I'm doing something that I love. And then I thought, wait a tick, I'm fine. And the second that I realized that I was indeed fine and it wasn't me and that it was the spirit, the pain stopped and I was able to relay what I felt to my client. And they were very casual about, oh, yes, that's how my grandfather died. Yeah. Mm-hmm. They weren't particularly interested in it, but I was particularly fascinated. It's been a while since that incident because I've asked my guides to not allow the intensity of sensation during my readings. Now I get a gentle but kind of clear indication of how a person has passed. I think I'm listening a little more closely. Don't need to whack me over the head, literally. Well, besides clairvoyance, clear seeing, clairaudience, clear hearing, clairsentience, clear sensing, and clairsentience, clear feeling, there's clairalience, which is clear smelling. And that's the ability to smell something related to a spirit. It might be pipe tobacco of a person who smoked during their lifetime, or flowers, or a particular type of perfume. With my paternal grandmother, I smell the apples and the things that she used to have on her back porch. She wasn't much of a cook, but with my maternal grandmother, who was a cook, another medium smelled the chocolate fudge that she used to make. And that's clairalience. And then there's clairgustance, which is clear tasting, and that's, as you guessed it, the ability to receive taste impressions from a spirit. And claircognizance is clear knowing, and that's the ability to know something without receiving it through our normal psychic senses. It's a feeling of just knowing, and it's our intuition. The Bible talks about it as the word of knowledge. We just know. It's the feeling that a message or situation is either right or wrong, and that it's either the right or wrong way to proceed, or that someone's telling the truth or lying. We just know, and that's claircognizance. So that's a lot of clairs. Back to clairvoyance, the topic of this episode. One of the most interesting authors on mediumship that I've found and the afterlife is C.W. Leadbeater, L-E-A-D, Lead, and it's spelled Beater, Leadbeater. I don't know if it's pronounced that way, Leadbeater. He wrote a book called Clairvoyance in 1899, and he takes a really incredibly deep look at clairvoyance specifically. In his book, he defines it as the power to see what is hidden from ordinary sight, and that may or may not be experienced along with clairaudience, the power to hear what would be inaudible to the ordinary physical ear. And I'll do a brief quote here. It may help to dispel a sense of unreality if we try to understand that clairvoyance, like so many other things in nature, is mainly a question of vibrations, and is in fact nothing but an extension of powers that we are all using every day of our lives. We are living all the while surrounded by a vast sea of mingled air and ether, the latter interpenetrating the former, as does all physical matter, and it is chiefly by means of vibrations in that vast sea of matter that impressions reach us from the outside. The number of these vibrations to which we are capable of responding is in reality quite infinitesimal. So he points out that the range of light and sound spectrum that we're able to perceive is really limited, but that doesn't mean that there isn't ultraviolet, X-ray wavelengths or subsonic and hypersonic frequencies that they don't exist. Of course they do. There are a lot of vibrations both above and below the two ranges of what an average person can see. And some can hear and see a wider range more easily and can develop their perception to pick up a wider spectrum. That's all mediumship is, tuning into the frequencies that are missed on a daily basis. Because energy follows focus, and we are energy. And when we focus on something, our perception deepens. And that's perfectly natural. Each of us has an etheric body or subtle body, and you can think of that as being comprised of a finer matter, sort of smaller particles. And this etheric body has the ability to sense, and those correspond with our physical body. Now, we don't have organs in our etheric body, but we do have layers to our aura, which we talked about in a previous show. And we have an astral body and a mental body. So it makes sense that if we're comprised of all those layers, that we could actually communicate on all those levels and into those other worlds. That is done through a steady and progressive extension of our senses, so that by sight and by hearing, we might be able to appreciate vibrations that are far higher and far lower than those which are ordinarily recognized. Even cooler, the chakras, and we talked about them in a previous exercise, balancing our chakras. Our chakras are centers of vitality in the astral body. They're actually strong enough to activate etheric matter and serve as kind of an antenna into those other dimensions and realms. So we don't have organs in our astral body, but as a sentient being, our spirit is able to perceive. And since our spirit is a part of our being, actually more so than our physical body, we are able to sense things in many dimensions. And just like the molecules of water sort of rearrange themselves and vibrate at different frequencies during states of being frozen, melting into water, boiling, and dissipating through evaporation, our states of being change, but we are not destroyed in the process. More than that, we exist on all those layers simultaneously. So we can communicate as a physical body or an astral one or an etheric one, and all those levels can exchange information. You can kind of think of your chakras as the interface between states of being and the hookup between the physical and the spiritual parts of us. Now, people ask me, my students ask me how people experience clairvoyance, and they sometimes share their experiences of how they haven't experienced clairvoyance. Some people have a really unique occurrence that happens, like a near-death experience or a drug-induced state, or maybe they're under anesthetic, and they have a single experience of being able to see. Usually because the specific occurrence that led to the experience doesn't repeat itself, they might dismiss their experience and think it was just a hallucination. Others begin to connect intermittently and become conscious of the brilliant colors and vibrations of the human aura. The others find themselves seeing and hearing something which those around them are blind and deaf, and then these occurrences increase in frequency. Other people see faces, landscapes, colored clouds floating in front of their eyes in the dark before they sink to rest, or even with their eyes closed. The commonest experience of all is those who begin to remember with greater and greater clearness what they've seen and heard on other planes while they slept. There are actually different ways of categorizing and classifying clairvoyance that Ledbetter identified. He thought they could be arranged by the kind of sight that's used as to whether they were perceived at the mental, astral, or etheric level. They could be ranked according to the capacity of the clairvoyant, taking into consideration whether or not they were trained or untrained, or whether their vision was regular and under their control, or inconsistent and independent of their efforts, sort of a spontaneous clairvoyance. He also thought, well, we could divide it up, whether they experienced it under hypnosis or with tutoring, or whether they reached that state on their own and had no assistance necessary, or whether they were able to be wide awake, or need to be in an altered state like a trance or a sleep in order to see things. But Ledbetter found that one of the most useful ways to classify was in a book that he found written by a Mr. Sinnett called Rationale of Mesmerism. He arranged them according to the type of sight rather than the plane of existence. Mr. Sinnett classified simple clairvoyance, which is an opening of your sight enabling a possessor to see whatever astral or etheric entities happen to be present but are nearby and around them, like seeing auras or spirits directly around a person within view. That would be simple clairvoyance. And then there's clairvoyance in space, which is seeing scenes or events removed from the seer in space. And they're either too distant for ordinary observation or concealed by intermediate objects. So being able to see through them or around them, that's clairvoyance in space. Or remote viewing. You might have heard of remote viewing. There's clairvoyance in time, which is seeing objects which are removed from the seer in time. In other words, the power of looking into the past or the future. Those would be considered clairvoyance in time, or prophecy or fortune telling. That would be the name related to that you might have heard of. One thing that I've become aware of is some people are better senders and some people are better receivers. And that's really true on both sides of the veil. We run into spirits and some of them are better communicators than others, but that's an indication of what's going on for them. I wanted to quote something quickly here from Ledbetter. This is regarding the practitioners of clairvoyance. And I just found his language charming and thought that you might enjoy it. He will be impressed by the protean forms of the ceaseless tide of elemental existence, ever swirling around him, menacing sometimes, yet always retiring before a determined effort of the will. He will marvel at the enormous army of entities temporarily called out of this ocean into a separate existence by the thoughts and wishes of man, whether good or evil. He will watch the manifold tribes of the nature spirits at work or their play, and he will sometimes be able to study with ever-increasing delight the magnificent evolution of some of the orders of the glorious kingdoms of the devas, which correspond approximately to the angelic host of Christian terminology. I'd like to start with our tales from the other side. When I say that, it often sounds like sort of sensationalistic, like, ooh, tales from the other side. But no, it's actually not like that for a medium. And that's one of the reasons I chose to do this program, is to talk about life on both sides of the veil from a medium's perspective. I really respect the experience of spirits that have crossed, and I take it quite seriously what I do. I believe that a good medium or a good psychic, just like anybody else, a good person in the world will always bring you messages of comfort and counsel, help you navigate some of the more difficult issues in your life. I wanted to share this story because I found it particularly interesting. We've been talking about auras and chakras and information and clairvoyance. What happens if you don't see anything? What does that mean? I had an unusual occurrence just recently. I was at an event and I was offering a mini reading to people as they came and went. And my last one came and sat down and she said, "Could you connect with my mother?" And I said, "I'm pretty sure I can," because I've never in the past, between you and me, had trouble doing that. I got the oddest impression. I actually felt like there were two people there, but I couldn't see one of them at all. The one that I could see, I felt like wasn't really the person. It was almost like the way she wanted to be seen. And she was showing herself as a petite, dark-haired woman, French origin, and had been sexually molested as a child. My client looked at me and she was so puzzled. And she goes, "Well, no, my mom is kind of more Germanic looking and was 6'4". And I just was gobsmacked. I was like, what? I've never been stumped. Do you know what I mean? Sort of like, what? So I offered her a free, longer reading to try to detangle this. And once I got out of the event, I went home and I'm talking to my guides. I'm like, what the heck? You never leave me stranded. What was the deal? And they drew my attention back to the experience. I realized that there had been that second spirit there that was her mother, but that she was completely devoid of any auric colors or her personality. There was nothing to read at all. It's like life had obliterated her. Once I made that connection, it started to untangle for me. And I realized that her mother had probably had DID, dissociative identity disorder. And even in death, she felt that it was safer to project the alter identity than it was to reveal herself. As soon as I acknowledged that, she started showing me images of things that had happened to her in childhood. And one of them was just particularly atrocious. I saw her chained like a dog and put in, for lack of a better word, a sweat box in the backyard in high heat and locked in there. I wonder she didn't die. So when I sat with my client, I had made the connection that her mother had been so sorely abused that she had to leave her own personality and that she had become sociopathic. My client sat down in front of me and I said, is there any chance that your mother might have been sociopathic? And she said, oh, yes. So I conveyed what I had experienced. In the process of the reading, something really particularly touching happened as she recounted some of the things that had happened to her as a child at the hands of this woman who was not any kinder to her than the parents that had treated her the way they did. My client said, well, I just wanted to tell my mom that I love her. And she said, just every now and then, I would catch a little glimpse of what my mom was really like as a person. She would play with us as kids and laugh. And I saw her for just that little snitchet, that little widget in time. She said, I just wanted to tell her I love her. And it was absolutely miraculous because a transformation began for her mother. Her mother, because of the level of suffering that she had been through, couldn't accept anyone telling her that she was an okay person. So on the other side, she had still retained her dissociation. But because her daughter had been present during those times, she could acknowledge that at those times she had been lovable. The only person that could ever have worked with her would have been her daughter, that particular daughter, who saw her through those windows and loved her. And the mother's demeanor changed, and there was just the slightest blush of pink, which is unconditional love, that just flushed slightly in her auric field, sort of phased in and out. And so, we heal each other. Love heals. We can't always accept love because sometimes we're too self-denigrating or we're too focused on what it is that we're dealing with. But it's there. It's always there. And I thought it was extraordinary that in this particular case, it was there in the heart of a daughter that had been terribly abused herself, but she could see her mom and loved her as such. There are other reasons that our auric field would be empty. One is sociopathy. A sociopath is someone sort of the opposite of an empath. An empath is someone who takes on or feels the emotions of other people, and at the far extreme can't even decipher their own emotion from those of other people. Coming closer to center, we get to normal, and then going out, or more balanced. I don't know if there's such a thing as normal. Then going out the other side of that spectrum, we get to sociopaths. And generally, a sociopath has had things happen to them that have made them detach from their emotions. Sociopaths are not DID or schizophrenic or anything else by nature. but they've learned to wall off their emotions so that they can only feel their own emotions. And at the far extreme, they really wouldn't care whether they were hurting somebody else or not, because they can't feel the suffering of that other person because of their detachment. So sociopathy could be a reason, if you're looking at someone's aura, that it's empty, but don't jump to conclusions and don't lose your compassion, because often it can mean that that person is suicidal, that they're having thoughts of leaving this world because they feel empty and their emotions have been so deeply violated. Another reason could be that they're near their time. Edgar Cayce is noted for his occurrence. For those of you that don't know, a famous medium that was called the sleeping prophet, because he would go into a dead trance, diagnose and prescribe care for people in the medical arena. Extraordinary gift. So he was very attuned to auras. He was going to take an elevator, and he looked in the elevator and he didn't see anything in the auras of the people that were there. They were just empty. Whether he made the connection instantaneously or not, I'm not sure, but he decided not to take that elevator, and that elevator crashed and all the people that were aboard passed. I know I've given a reading to someone and I was stunned about the fact that I didn't see any symbols or colors in their aura. That was a separate occurrence from the one that I mentioned. So I asked my guides to please give me something to give this person, and they were just talking about, take care of yourself, enjoy your life, indulge yourself. The message really made them happy, and I found out later that I think it was within about a month that they had passed on to the other side, and I had just not understood what I saw. Not that I would have blurted it out. That would have been inappropriate and unnecessary. For you as a reader, it's important that you really look and not make conclusions quickly about what it is that you see and what you don't see. And so that's a deeper look, our tale from the other side. Well, to top off our show today, I've got an exercise that you can do at home to build your intuitive skills. So let's get our psychic knuckles cracking. Since we were talking about clairvoyance today, I thought I'd talk about some methods of development. There are lots of ways that you can develop your clairvoyance. One simple way is to just start playing I Spy with yourself. If you ever played that as a kid or play that now, I spy a cow, I spy the color red, and you just sort of pick an object or a color or maybe a feather, the number 8, and you just decide that you're going to see how many times you can see it. It's opening your awareness in a physical dimension that helps your awareness in a non-physical dimension. So that's kind of a fun game that you can play with yourself, and it's easy and does help. If you want to develop your clairaudience, you could make flashcards for yourself. One of the best ways that I heard to develop your clairaudience was to use flashcards. You can buy inexpensive ones around and about, or for children, or print them off the internet, and just test yourself. What's on the other side of that? What number is there? What color is there? What president is there? That's another way to develop that. There are a lot of ways that people have developed their clairvoyance. I will say that there are a lot of ways that people have connected to other realms and had experiences out of their body while living. Many of these are completely not recommended. It's important to maintain a simple, clear, unadulterated state of mind when you're having a true clairvoyant experience or working in spirit. And these are ways that are not recommended. Intoxicating drugs, inhaling stupefying fumes, whirling until the vertigo renders you unconscious, sacrifices that are made to call in powers or black magic, self-hypnosis. That's not necessarily bad when it comes down to getting over a clinical issue, but not good for working in spirit. Other people hypnotizing you and trying to transfer their gift. If anyone tells you, sit with me or sleep with me or whatever, and I can give you my gift, that's one to walk away from. And regulating your breath to the point that it starts creating a physical problem for your body so that you start hallucinating, not a good way. I kind of think that if you have to join a secret organization where you take a vow and don't talk about what you learn inside of it, that's probably not the best way either. So again, these are ways that you can open your intuition, but they are certainly not recommended. The main reason is that they leave you too open or vulnerable to outside influences. And I mean influences not just in this dimension, but in the other. I really feel like the best way to develop your clairvoyance or any of your psychic gifts is, first of all, to set your intent. And you want to set your intent to a moral high ground, if you will. C.W. Ledbetter, that I mentioned in the first half of the show, says that you should enter with all your energy upon the path of moral and mental evolution. He and I both believe that the best practice is meditation and or sitting with a developed medium that exemplifies the gift of love, which is, of course, the highest gift. And you can tell whether somebody's a good person or not by how you feel around them. Do they have a healing energy? Are they compassionate? Do they offer you comfort or counsel? If those things are true, you're probably good to go to study with someone. It's those egos and arrogant people that you need to look out for. But on your own, set that intent. Energy follows focus. It's really important to suit up when you go into the psychic realm. Of course, you can develop your own gift. And my suggestions are this. They're kind of step by step. Number one, clear the space. Dedicate the space. Clear it of any negative energy and dedicate it to only the highest vibrations of truth, light, love, peace, knowledge, wisdom, healing, and understanding. And then ground yourself. Mother Earth is our physical connection, and we're kind of antennas of Mother Earth. So just let your ego and your intellect drop off into the Mother Earth. Reinforce your connection to the Earth. That's grounding. And after you've grounded, number 3, connect with the highest realms. Some people like to think of it as Father Sky or our spiritual connection or the divine or God, however you wish to go, as long as it's upward and light and love. You would ask your guides for their protection, and it doesn't have to be anything floral and intricate. It can just be something like, I'm going in, protect me. I know you've got my back, thank you. Something simple. And so you connect to those highest realms, and then you just relax. I often use a CD called The Ultimate Om, or Sacred Drums, A Shamanic Journey, or Singing Bowls, or native flute music, just because it's nice to have a background. You don't need one. And then once you're relaxed, you set your intent. Maybe you want to travel and meet your guides, or maybe you want to deepen your gifts, or whatever your journey is. And so you work and experience that. That's number 5. And then number 6, you would close your energies back after you finish working by pulling your auric field back towards you and kind of reground. You want to make sure that you close your energies. And you can do it. Just trust your guides and angels. They're there for you. You might not even know who they are, but it's okay because they're there. So just talk to them. They're there. That's this week's psychic development exercise, and I hope you've enjoyed the show. I did. In our next episode, I'm going to be talking about mediumship, actually the process of mediumship, and I'll be sharing another tale from the other side and offering some interesting things to help build your psychic abilities. And I appreciate your joining me. Feel free to visit my website at mediumtracylockwood.com. And that's Tracy with an EY at the end, or friend me on Facebook. I'd love to meet you. My Facebook is facebook.com/psychic medium Tracy Lockwood. And you can also reach me directly by phone in the U.S. by texting me on my cell at 540-998-9789. And I look forward to seeing you next week for a view of life from a medium's perspective. And please remember, it's never inappropriate to be kind. And without integrity, you have nothing.